What's up, Jets fans, and welcome to a bittersweet episode of JetNation Live. We are your hosts, Dylan Tereman and Glenn Naughton. Glenn, that makes it four in a row. The Jets are learning how to win despite a pretty explosive trade request that came down midweek from one of their better offensive players, and then two or three major offensive injuries on top of that during the game, which we'll get into severe injuries that are going to cost the Jets for the season. But they're learning how to win anyway, and I think that's the most important thing. They keep it going, undefeated in October, have one more chance to sweep. And it feels good despite all the bittersweetness of losing our good players. So how do you feel coming out of it despite everything?
Well, if you look at the way what I have on my Twitter bio, Dylan, I can't be held accountable for anything I say within 48 hours of a Jets game or major news because I lose my mind. I get so mad when stuff like this happens. I was like all fans. I was devastated with the Breece Hall injury, only compounded by the AVT news. But I mean, there's no way around it. It sucks. I'm not going to sit here and try to sugarcoat it. It's a devastating injury, especially when you look at how much Breece Hall has meant to this offense. I mean, he has been the offense if we're being realistic. So as devastating as it was, I think the reason why I'm still feeling all right about this season, obviously not as good, obviously, but I'm still feeling okay because I think this should be an entirely different conversation. I think we have to talk about like how good is this defense?
Oh,
like, are we over? Like, and listen, I'm going to be honest for the Jet. For the people who don't like the Jets and they're oh well they played this quarterback and that quarterback. Like whether we like it or not, there is some credibility to that. Like you beat Aaron Rodgers, but we saw last week he's not the old Aaron Rodgers. Whether it's him or the offense, whatever it is. This isn't the old 38 points a game Packers.
right.
So the Jets, whether we want to admit it or not, they've caught some breaks. They haven't really faced a top-level quarterback with legitimate weapons. So that's why, like, I know we're going to talk about the Pats this week, but I'm not like talking trash predicting a win, but I'm kind of looking forward to the Buffalo game. That to me is going to be a really good measuring test. Like, even if they're competitive in that game, that's fantastic. If they go in there and they lose 42-10, then it's like, okay, were we overhyping ourselves? And I'm not saying that's going to happen. I do believe these corners are good enough, with them obviously there's other key players on the roster on the defensive side of the ball. But it's this secondary that I think is going to allow them to keep games close every single week. So that's when it's going to come down to the offense. And that's why losing Breece Hall is devastating. And that's why Zach Wilson's going to be under the microscope now. And Dylan, did I say to you, I know I said to someone, because I spend way too much time talking about this damn team. I'm on the podcast. I'm off the podcast. And it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I'm looking for someone to talk to about the Jets.
Yep.
But what the hell? I lost my train of thought now because I rambled. With Zach Wilson, that I felt like even though they were winning, and this is pre-Breece injury, I felt like Zach was kind of skating by because they were winning. Like the way he was playing, if they were losing these games, he would be the fans would be going crazy. But as they say, winning cures everything. But you watch him play, and we'll get into it. I get the O-line and the weapons and blah, 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 blah. But he hasn't been that good, no matter how you slice it. He hasn't been terrible. But I feel like now, with Breece gone, these free passes are gone now. Now fans are going to look at him as like, you got to be the guy now. You got to start carrying us. No more of this 120 yards and no touchdowns every week. Like, we got to see some. He's got one touchdown in a month. And I tweeted out, and people were like, well, why do you hate him? I'm like, the dude is literally on pace to throw 4 touchdowns. And you're acting like that shouldn't make me go, ooh, oh, well, that's not ideal. Like, and just that. And people are like, oh, you want the Jets to lose. No, like the guy is on pace to throw 4 touchdowns this year. So he doesn't have Breece Hall to lean on anymore. He's going to be under the microscope.
Yeah, exactly. And last week, I believe it was last week, we talked about not having to win in spite of your quarterback. And I don't want to say we're in that territory, but when you say those stats and look at his box scores and you watch him just play to play and the heart attack on legs that he truly is back there, and that's offensive line too, it's tough because he has the ability, and we've seen that, and especially last year down the stretch, but he just doesn't look comfortable again in the pocket. And starting with the first play, it was a little rough, missing open players in a clean pocket, excuse me. But back to your other point, I don't want to sound redundant when I say this, but every week has almost been like the toughest challenge for the Jets going forward since, I want to say, Miami. Miami was the first divisional game. We needed to get the monkey off our back in terms of divisional wins. Then Green Bay, it was, okay, now we have a true quarterback test in Aaron Rodgers. We cleaned up there. Then it was, Aaron Rodgers isn't the MVP. I get it. And then last week against Denver, obviously you have a second string quarterback again. But the Jets, again, take care of business. So this test against New England isn't the toughest test they'll have this year. And I agree, next week against Buffalo will be. But this is the toughest test to date because it's a completely different defense than I think we've seen maybe since like a Baltimore type defense. They play a lot of man, a lot of blitzing. So it's a different team. And I think it's going to be a true test. And we're actually going to have to see Zach Wilson, win it for us. But, we don't want to put the entire show before the intro even gets out. So we gotta take it in order, but we're going to go injury report. We're going to talk about trade deadline tonight. There was a move already made and a potential move or moves to be made still before the November 1st deadline. We're going to talk about the Broncos, obviously offensively, defensively, probably stay more on the defense because that was the shiner. The big moment for the defense was this game. And then we'll preview the Pats. And if we have time at the end, we'll get into our draft stuff as usual. I'll be honest up front, I have not been as in tune with the draft stuff during this 4-game win streak, obviously, because we've been winning. I still have plenty of players, plenty of notes to bring up. So I'm still excited for it. But I have not been as in tune as I want to be. But then again, I'd rather the Jets be better than be looking at prospects by Halloween weekend. So first, we're going to jump in. I labeled this one injury bug because it is unfortunate. The offense did catch an injury bug in this game. Elijah Vera Tucker came out with, I believe it was reported as a shoulder injury. It later turned into a tricep injury. It's torn. That will be the whole season. I believe Willie Colon said on the SNY podcast post game that he suffered a torn tricep and he was able to make it back. I don't know if he was, casting shade at AVT, but I think for everything AVT has done for this team already this season, the last thing I want him to do is to come back prematurely from an injury and risk further damage to our best offensive, if not best player on the team. You mentioned it, Breece Hall, he's done for the year. When he got hit, I thought it was a head injury. I thought they were going to get him for that new concussion protocol. I had no idea that it was his knee until I saw him limping off and then taking the cart to the locker room. Super upsetting moment. He was clearly going to be in contention, if not the front runner for offensive rookie of the year. I know there were some other rookies competing with him, but he was the guy. And the last 4 weeks specifically, he's just taken off to a new level. So unfortunately, he's done with an ACL tear. And then it wasn't done from there. Corey Davis got a knee injury. We haven't heard completely yet if he will play or not. I think he's trending towards playing from what I've heard. And then the other injury was John Franklin Myers. He had a right knee injury. He hobbled off, but was okay to return. I'm not sure if he did because the injury was late in the game. So of those injuries, obviously there was a pivot point. And the first pivot getting into the trade deadline stuff was James Robinson. I'm going to kick it to you first for your reaction to the James Robinson trade. I know it happened a couple days ago, and I thought we were going to hop on a pod. I was going to hit you up and ask if you wanted to, but it was only the one move, and it came at a weird time with the time difference between us.
Yeah.
So what were your initial thoughts from the James Robinson trade?
Listen, I liked it. As we discussed before we went on the air, I kind of, when the injury happened, I started scrambling, sort of thinking who could they target here, because you felt like a move was imminent. And that, that was I actually saw people, Dylan, and I don't want to say people are dumb, or I don't want to insult anyone, but I saw people like getting mad at the idea of a trade, saying, let's see what Bam Knight can do. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, this isn't the last few years when the Jets are 2-5 or 2-6 or 1-7 at this point. Like, they're a playoff contender right now. And you don't, at that point, hand the season off. Somebody said to me, Bam Knight is a similar running style to Breece Hall. Yeah, and that they both run forward with a football in their hands. Like, that's about it. That's where it ends.
Right.
Like, Breece Hall is, and I don't mean this. Listen, I like Bam Knight. You can check my Twitter. Before the draft, I said the Jets should consider this guy as a day 3 pick. I like him. But he is not in Breece Hall's class. Like,
No.
Breece Hall has been a monster. Bam Knight's a nice player, but the deal, Robinson was one of the names I kind of came up with, and I said to you, I heard a day or two, or maybe even earlier in the day, about how Jacksonville, like, officially Travis Etienne was the number one guy, Robinson was going to be the backup, and I just thought to myself, oh, maybe they'll end up trading this guy. And then a few hours later, Breece Hall gets hurt, and I'm like, oh Jesus, well, here's an obvious target. So I listed him and 2 or 3 other guys as possible targets. Not the same style as Breece Hall. Great lateral movement, east-west when he's looking for a hole to open up. And when the hole opens up, he doesn't hesitate to hit it. So he is a guy who can make plays. He's got the career stats to back it up. You watch him on film, like I said, you see the quickness, the quick feet. I saw several plays where, the play design was one way. Defense does a nice job of shutting it down. And the lateral movement, he's able to just, a couple of jump cuts, and he's off in another direction, picking up 25 yards. So he brings a lot to the table. Doesn't have a ton of receptions, but from the balls I saw him, from the balls I saw him catch, he looked like he was shorthanded. Sometimes you get guys who can catch the ball, but they're just in an offense where they don't ask them to do it that often. So in terms of what you could possibly get on short notice to replace Breece Hall, like Joe Douglas couldn't have done much better. Not a lot of teams are going to be looking to trade very talented players at this point. You have to find a team like the Jaguars where they've got a talented guy who's moved down the depth chart and they're kind of already out of the playoff race. So there's only so many of those available. I love the move for that reason. But yeah, Bam Knight, like I said, I like him, but saying let's just go to Bam Knight now and Michael Carter. Listen, I love Michael Carter, but he's not a 20-25 carry a game guy. You look at his entire college career, I think he had 15 or more carries twice between his time in North Carolina and with the Jets. Like, he is a 7 to 12 carry a game guy, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But the number of people who I saw saying, let MC be your featured back and Bam Knight's your backup. No. Let MC get his 7 to 12 carries and then bring someone else in who can get your sort of, around 15 carries, and either Bam Knight or Ty Johnson, whoever is your third guy. But I like the move. Didn't like the idea of MC being a number one back, and definitely not Bam Knight, who, again, I like, but he just doesn't have near the explosion that Breece Hall has. He's not going to flip the field the way Breece Hall could.
Yeah, I don't think that there's many running backs, especially running backs that are available going into week 8 of the NFL season that can break away quite like Breece Hall can do. I think James Robinson does a lot of things that complement Michael Carter well. But the full terms of the trade, the Jets are going to send a conditional 6th to Jacksonville, for Robinson. That 6th becomes a 5th rounder if Robinson eclipses 260 yards for the rest of the season, putting him at 600 total yards for the season. Ultimately, I like the move just as much as you. I think you can never, like I just said, you can't replace Breece Hall 1-for-1. No. But the quick pivot when you're 5-2, Joe Douglas, looking at this team, looking at the remaining schedule, and you say, hey, it's not going to be perfect, but we need to rely on this run game. He's not going to be the bell cow. I think it's probably going to be a 50-50 split between Michael Carter and him.
Probably 10, 12 carries each.
Yeah, exactly. And there was a stat that somebody put out. I believe it was a Jags beat writer, and it said the Jaguars were 2-0 when Robinson had 12 or more carries, and they're 0-5 when Robinson had 11 or less carries. So I'm not gonna use the Jerry Jones. Well, if we hand it to him 25 times, we're gonna win the game.
Right.
But that's the formula. And I think the Jets know that they have more running opportunities, so to speak, for just Michael Carter and for Ty Johnson and Bam, because they're good players, but they're not even James Robinson caliber players. James Robinson has already had 1,000 yards under his belt as an undrafted free agent in 2020. 7 touchdowns in that season as well, adding almost 50 catches in that season as well. So you said it. He doesn't have all the pass game usage, but it's there in sprinkles. I love this stat. He's averaging 4.5 yards per carry and 6.9 yards per reception on his career. So he's a pretty big play waiting to happen. And those are the types of situations the Jets find themselves in. 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 5 and less, where James Robinson is going to be that guy. And one cut, downhill, physical, a proven producer. Those are all the things that I was reading about James Robinson. I said, yeah, why not? For what you're giving up, Blake Cashman basically swapped for James Robinson. I think Joe Douglas is again going to come out looking like a better GM from this trade, and it's just another one under his belt that he's won, in my opinion, for sure.
And I think, like I said, I think I mentioned it, but to kind of reiterate it, I loved how quickly the move was made. It's like we know we're 5-2. We know we need a guy. There's no need to mess around. Get on the phones and make it happen. And I have no doubt that deal was in the works for hours before it happened. And then you end up getting a starting caliber back for a day 3 pick. You just can't say enough about what Joe Douglas is. This is another example, Dylan, and I'm guilty of it from time to time. But sometimes you see trades that get made, and you just think teams grossly overvalue what a draft pick brings.
Yes.
And I think the years ago, what is this? Maybe 10 years ago, I think the Eagles traded for Darren Sproles for a 6th or 7th rounder.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, look, man, he's small. He's not going to carry it 12, 15 times. But this guy changes games.
Yeah.
He's so shifty and explosive. He changes games. And you just got him for a 6 or a 7. So teams listen, the Jaguars just gave up 1,000-yard back for a day 3 pick, where if you were to say, if you could get a 1,000-yard back with a day 3 pick, you would be doing backflips. Yeah. That would be that's a home run. But you just gave up a guy who did it. And I'm glad they did. But every now and then you see a trade where a proven player where what, the quality he's going to bring, and you get him for a 7 or a 6. And it's teams just, I understand sometimes there's other circumstances, but it's just, it's a steal. It's a steal of a trade. And I love it.
Yeah. I'm excited to see their usage going forward. Not that actually everybody cares about my fantasy team. So I have Michael Carter in fantasy, pretty happy about it. I was actually badgering the guy who owns Travis Etienne during the game on Sunday. Can I have Etienne? I'll give you this. And he was like, nah, he's going off. I was like, all right, what about James Robinson? The second the trade went through, he's like, well, now he's on the Jets, so he's going to probably have a lot. So, I need a lot. I was like, all right, dude, everybody overvalues their picks. I get it. It's whatever, but I just had to throw that out there. Michael Carter's probably going to be the guy for at least 2 weeks. They said they're going to take it slow with James Robinson, but I think he's hungry to get back out there and really show the Jaguars that he shouldn't have been the guy to get rid of for a 6th-round pick. Like you said, you're doing backflips for 1,000-yard back, and they got him for free. They didn't even have to use a pick on him. He was undrafted. So I get it. ETN is a star. He's a playmaker, but he's one injury away from you have, I think, JaMychal Hasty. So I think that's a great trade for Joe Douglas on the surface. I'm excited to see how it works. We can get into the Broncos game from here. An ugly one. Definitely an ugly one. The Jets win 16-9. I feel like the touchdown by Breece Hall was probably the deciding factor. I felt like you could have turned the game off at that point and been way happier with the outcome instead of sitting through the rest of the 3.5 quarters of just third downs and punts and
we knew, we said go. What did I predict? 17-10 or 17-13.
Almost predicted it perfectly. Yes.
Yeah, we said it would be
10 or something like that.
Yeah. And if he would have hit that damn extra point, I would have been that much closer.
Yeah, that's true.
But look, we knew it wasn't going to be high scoring, and that's I see people complaining with, oh, why are you complaining about Zach? Everyone knew it was going to be it can be low scoring, but you can still make a couple of plays. That's and it was offensively, it was a tremendously boring football game. But I do like defense myself, so it was great seeing Sauce make the plays he made in the secondary. And as I said, with the corners right now, you can't speak highly enough of them. DJ Reed had that great play down the middle of the field on I believe it was on Sutton on the deep ball down the middle. He got his hand in there and batted it away. So these corners are so much fun to watch. D line wasn't as disruptive as it had been, but one thing I did I was going to mention, because I talk about it every now and then. A lot of fans almost laugh at you when you talk about a guy getting a lot of pressures, like putting heat on the quarterback. Like that interception that the Jets got happened because Quinnen Williams was bearing down on the quarterback, and he's like, I got to get rid of this now. And he threw it before he wanted to. It was a sloppy throw, and it's picked off. But I've literally seen people like, oh, I'm so tired of talking about pressures, as if they don't impact the game. And I've said they impact the game less now than they did years ago. Because nowadays, outside of Joe Flacco, everybody's mobile. Everybody can run, and a lot of guys can throw on the run. So, years ago, if you got a guy off his spot, like you were probably going to win that play. But now it's less frequent, but you still have an impact by doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to, I was pulling up a stat about the cornerbacks because I think collectively this might have been their best game. I know we could say that probably about every game this season, but DJ Reed, he had 8 tackles, 9 targets, 5 receptions, so 55% completions for 50 yards. So 10 yards of completions, kind of a lot, but 3 passes defensed. Sauce Gardner, 10 tackles, 10 targets, 4 receptions, 40% completion for 16 yards. How do you even catch a ball 4 times and get 16 yards in today's offense? It's amazing to me. He added another 3 passes defensed. You mentioned the one-on-one deep with Sutton, and then he had another excellent 3rd and 6 tackle, DJ Reed, to force a punt. Sauce on Sutton. I'm so glad the refs decided not to call any penalties that night because it was both ways. And I'm not going to sit here and say the Jets are guilt-free in the penalty blame game, but we're not going to sit here and play that. It was hand fighting both ways all game. The refs let them be physical. And you know what happened?
And you got to love that.
Sauce wins.
I love that.
Exactly. I prefer that as a watcher
Absolutely.
because I don't like seeing 15-yard spot foul, all the way down the field. I hate those types of offenses. So for the Jets to stop a backup quarterback when the situation was primed for a ref to throw a flag and put them right at the 1-yard line with the chance to tie the game and go into overtime in true Broncos fashion, they closed it out. You mentioned the D-line. Yeah, they weren't as great, and I think the first half was a little bit sloppier. But I also think Jeff Ulbrich was sending way too much pressure in the first half with his backers and safeties, and then he kind of eased up in the second half, let his front 4 do their thing. It's kind of funny how every time he trusts their front 4, they just kind of end up going off, and they ended up making better pressure, affecting the game. They got the interception, like you said, with Q. So all in all, I love this defense. When I go back and watch the all 22, I focus more on offensive play charting and literally drawing some plays. Like I literally have a note card of a play drawn. I draw almost every play this offense runs just to find trends and things like that. But this defense, I can't skip through it. It's not worth skipping through. I find myself posting more clips of the defense than I do the offense. But I just note down a lot more offensive stuff. So we can get into the offense, but this defense is so special. The Huff and Lawson half sack, that was great. It should have been all Huff. I'm not going to lie. It should have been all Huff.
I thought so too. I thought, yeah.
Yeah, it's upsetting, but it is what it is. Lawson didn't really look that good in this game to me. I think ever since the Packers game, he's kind of been, I don't know, like he was sliding.
He's been inconsistent.
He was sliding all over the turf in Green Bay. And I think that was like making somebody coming off of a leg injury like he has a little nervous, maybe. And this game, he just wasn't getting going quite enough. But yeah, Quinnen was getting going. I loved Huff. I think they use Huff only in the second half. It's weird. I turn it on and they're using a lot of Jacob Martin in the first half. And I'm not saying it's wrong by any means, but I feel like Bryce Huff deserves 4 quarters of action at this point. So is there anything else that you wanted to point out specifically about this defense that we haven't talked about yet?
No, like I said, just what I talked about at the top, man. The combination of these corners and this D line, it makes me wonder, and that's what I'm. As I said, and people say to me like, "Oh, you can't look past," and I'm like, I'm not playing. I can look as far ahead as I want. I'm not getting ready. I'm not playing this Sunday. You realize that? Like, oh, you don't look past the Patriots. I'm on my sofa. The Jets can't look past the Patriots. I'm a fan. I can look at week 17 if I want to.
Right.
So I am kind of looking ahead to that Buffalo game as like that's where we find out if this team is a contender or not. Because Buffalo's a top 3 team in the NFL, and if you go in there and you play well against them and hold your own, then that means you can hold your own against the best. I mean, a win. I have a hard time even imagining a win unless Zach Wilson's play gets better.
Sure. Yeah.
We talked about the big thing to me with Zach, and not to keep harping on it, but the thing that bothers me, and I understand, guys aren't as open or whatever, but just I feel like every time he like one of the reasons I loved Zach Wilson so much, and you know how much I wanted them to take him coming out of BYU, is the number of times I saw him make on target throws while on the run, like in tight windows. Like it's not like, oh, he's in college and he had a 10-yard window. No, he didn't go to Ohio State. He didn't go to Clemson. Like he had small windows.
He was throwing to guys named Gunnar Romney and Isaac Rex.
Yeah, exactly. And the number of times I see him roll out and thread the needle and hit a receiver, I'm like, that's why I want this guy. And now as a Jet, it's like I'm seeing the rollouts, but I'm not seeing the throws. And it's like, all right, you don't bail on the guy after 17 games.
No.
But as much as I've just said the Buffalo game's big, like this one is too, because now there is no, Justin Fields just torched his team. Now, granted, he's a much better runner and he torched them using his legs. But I mean, throw a touchdown this week. Like that's all. That's all I'm saying. Throw a touchdown. If he goes without a touchdown again, and fans want to make as many excuses for him as possible, like what did you think? Again, you in talking about this game, to me it was really eye-opening on that last drive when they ran it 3 times and punted. Like I get it's your defense is dominating and all that, but when you say you'd rather give your defense, have them have to get 4 stops versus asking Zach Wilson to complete a 10-yard pass, and they just weren't willing to do it. Run, punt. And I mean, they completely took the ball out of his hands. So granted it worked, but it's just, I don't know. There's enough there that I understand people who say they're skeptical or worried. Like I'm not calling Zach a bust because some people are. Oh, he was a bust the second he was drafted. He sucks. And I'm like, pump the brakes. Like it's game 17. He's still a young kid. Let's give him some time. But the coach's lack of willingness to let him throw in a big spot, it just really surprised me. And that was the first time I started to think, like, do they just not have any faith in this guy? Like, I get that you don't want to have him throw it 50 times a game, but like you have the lead and the ball and a first down ends it. And you're like, nope, we're just going to run it and punt it away. I mean, all it takes is a missed tackle and all of a sudden you're in a bad spot. Obviously that didn't happen, but it's Zach's got to do something against New England. Something.
Yeah, and I'm not going to accuse the coaching staff of protecting Zach Wilson, so to speak, but when you go from averaging 51.5 dropbacks with Joe Flacco to, let's see how many attempts. Sorry, I should have done this math first. 25.5.
22. Okay.
Yeah, 25 with Zach Wilson. You're cutting your passing in half, obviously. Obviously, it's good that the run game is going and working, and 4-0, no one's ever going to complain. But when you go back and look at the all-22, it started on the first play. He had a little hook sit to Uzama, and he decided to take the clear out on the dagger. Some people say he was trying to hit Corey Davis on the in cut. I think he was trying to hit Tyler Conklin, and it just turned into almost double coverage, and it was ugly from the start. It's one of these games has to be the game, and I think this will be the game, the Patriots, because they're going to do what they always do, take away your best, and that would be the run game, whether it's Michael Carter, James Robinson. If Breece Hall was in this game, obviously Breece Hall would be the focus, but they're still going to look to put the ball in Zach Wilson's hands, make him drop back 36 times like he did against Pittsburgh, and if he doesn't come up with at least 200, 220, 225, it looks like the Patriots are going to not run away with it, but keep it way closer than it should be at this point. I think the Jets are a way better team than New England. And it's going to be frustrating if Zach Wilson doesn't eventually let it rip. I think the first loss when Zach has a bad game is just going to snowball everything on Jets Twitter, especially. But I'm not panicking yet either, just like you. Like
I said, I'm not panicking. I'm just looking and going, it's a little bit weird.
And other than maybe Trevor Lawrence, none of the other quarterbacks in his draft classes have looked good. Mac Jones has a 2-6 touchdown to interception ratio. Justin Fields, other than this Monday night game, really has not looked that good. Trey Lance obviously is injured. And then you have Zach and Trevor, who were 1-2 for a reason. And I think 17 games way too early. I'm nervous. I'm not panicking, but they're also not protecting. I think they're doing what they need to do to win, no matter what the case is. And that's what this year has always been about. I feel like now that it's actually happening and we're seeing it happen, it's time to nitpick. And that's cool. We can nitpick, but we're also 5-2. And I know you and I personally are not in any way ready to say, all right, I would rather have Zach Wilson throw for 275 and lose than 160 and win.
I saw somebody pose that question on Twitter, and it's like, that's like the definition of a straw man. Like, there is no fan in their right mind. None, not one, not a single. Like, normally I'm like, well, you got to look at both sides. There is not one fan, like, unless you got like serious like psych issues. There's not one fan who's like, I'd rather Zach throw for 300 and we lose. I would rather he throw for 0 and you win. Like, that's what matters at the end of the day. On a week, like, here's the way I look at it, because like I said, a lot of people were giving me a hard time, and it's great. It's fun time. But like, on a week-to-week basis, absolutely, like, it's about winning. But sometimes you take a step back and look at the big picture. And my whole argument is, this isn't sustainable. You're not going to throw 1 touchdown a month and keep winning football games. It's going to catch up with you. You're going to play a team like the Bills, or a team that they can put up some points, and your 0 touchdowns isn't going to carry you. Exactly. And Breece Hall is gone. That was a hilarious thing. Like, I sent this tweet out. Like, I understand why people are nervous. And people are coming after me, and they keep referencing the 2 plays where Breece Hall got the ball to the 1-yard line. And like, oh, well, those are practically touchdowns. Yeah. Well, first of all, that's another word for not a touchdown. Second of all, and I kept saying to people, I'm like, you realize Breece Hall is out, right? He's done. Yep. Yeah, but still, Zach had those passes. Right. But now who will those passes go to? Right. Oh, whatever. You just hate Zach. No, I love the pick, wanted the guy. I saw that Breece Hall was the workhorse who carried this offense while Zach was doing close to nothing throwing the ball. And you mentioned that, and people are like, oh, why are you ignoring the Breece Hall stuff? And I'm like, why are you pretending he's not hurt? Like, he's not there now. Now we have to move forward. And what we have now is a quarterback who leaned heavily on a guy who's gone and hasn't thrown a touchdown in nearly a month. And I hope he goes out and throws 6 touchdowns against New England. That would be fantastic. But there is the part of me that worries, because here's the question, Dylan. Here's what I was going to ask you, because you mentioned it. Mm-hmm. And I've asked this question a lot, because we've had Mark Sanchez and Geno Smith and Sam Darnold and now Zach Wilson. Like, how many games is enough? Like, I know it's not like a set number, but the example I've given for years now is I read an interview years ago with Bill Walsh, Hall of Fame head coach, innovator, one of the best to ever do it. And he said that when he's developing a quarterback, 20 games. He's like, if I don't see it by game 20, I know he's not it.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying 20 is the number. I'm saying Zach's at 17, and he did some really good things last year. This year, he hasn't done anything. Even the Pittsburgh game, he was good for a quarter and a half. Yep. Even if you want to say 2 quarters. Okay, so he's had 2 good quarters out of 16. Like, how many games? At what point is it okay for the people who are just undyingly loyal and can't imagine questioning Zach? Like, how many games is it okay for you to go, you know what, this might be a problem? Like, is it 20 games? Is it 25? Is it 29? Is it 40? Like, how many games do you see of not doing franchise quarterback stuff before you say, you know what, this might not be the guy?
Yeah, I didn't want to, in my ramble before, I didn't want to compare the mistakes he was making to a previous Jets quarterback named Sam Darnold, but it looks very similar. Not everything. The mistakes look similar, but the flashes look way better. But to get to your
fewer turnovers is big.
100%. That is the biggest.
Huge. That's huge.
Difference between the two.
That's the funny thing is, last week I sent out a tweet showing how much better he was than those quarterbacks.
Yes.
And it was like, oh, you're a jerk because those guys sucked, and why are you comparing him to them? So that was like and then I sent that one that's saying they're worried. It's like, oh, you're a jerk and you suck and you're attacking Zach. Mm-hmm. Like, I sent out something good and I'm a jerk. I sent out something bad and I'm a jerk. Like, because the fan base is going to be divided, and whoever disagrees with you is going to come after you.
I've used this tweet so many times this week, but you can say, I love pancakes, and somebody will be in your mentions saying, why do you hate waffles?
Exactly.
So that's exactly what that is. And to get to your answer, it's 20 to 25. I think that is the range. Obviously, you can tell earlier than that. It shouldn't take you longer than 25 games. Obviously, there's certain circumstances. I want to look at Trevor Lawrence per se last year. He had probably the worst head coach in NFL history for the first 9, 10, 11, 12 games of his career. I'm not going to say you can totally cancel those out, but you have to take those differently than the next 9 that he has now played under the interim head coach and now their new coach in Doug Peterson. Obviously, Zach Wilson is a different situation. He's in the same system, all the same coaches, this and that. But I still think you have to give them 20 to 25 games. So if you look at 25 games, that would put you after the Jacksonville game this year if Zach stayed healthy. So all but 2 games this year. I think that would be a fair assessment, of Zach Wilson, to the point where I'm not panicking and taking one of the top guys in 2023. But you kind of have to start looking and say, all right, if he's on pace to throw 4 touchdowns and he ends with 6, that's not enough. And I understand quarterbacking and offense has looked a lot different in 2022 than it has in 2020 and 2021. We're seeing a lot of teams win with under 200 yards passing, a lot of running back by committees just booming. But that's not an excuse to keep a struggling quarterback. And Zach Wilson has struggled. You can't sugarcoat it any other way. He's looked way better than the past quarterbacks, but he is absolutely struggling, running out of clean pockets, running for his life. And that's, again, not his fault, but you have to know when enough is just simply enough. You aren't as durable as he thinks he is. I think that's a secret component of Zach Wilson, why we don't see him take off a lot. Because how many times after a sack does he just need to be scraped up off the ground by his offensive lineman? Maybe that's his size, but I just feel like his durability is not fully there. All things to say, 25 games. And I'm not going to hit a panic button until then, or, he sees ghosts for about a month straight. So 20 to 25 games would be my range.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I feel like you said, you can see it before then. And that's the other thing. Is I'm not sitting here. Sports really, in all honesty, sports conversation, debate, whatever you want to call it, it really has become like just another version of politics. Like if you say something that someone doesn't like, they have to take an extreme position. Mm-hmm. As someone said to me the other day, all these people are getting mad because Zach didn't throw for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. I'm like, how about 200 yards and 1 touchdown? Like, nobody's saying he's got to, set the world on fire.
Yep.
Yeah, do some little things. But people just, they take stuff so out of context. And that's, I just feel like, like I was saying earlier about the throws on the run, I've said this for years about players. As they're coming along, just show me that you can do the things you were really good at in college. Yes. And, that's a stepping stone. Okay, there's that thing we knew he was good at, so let's build from there. But when you did things well in college and we're not even seeing that, that was my first thing. The first time I went to a game, first time I saw Vernon Golston live, and I was able to watch him, and I just watched him for a couple series. He was the only player I watched. And I was just like, he's not doing anything. He hasn't done one thing.
Yeah.
Not one step that you look at and go, oh, I see why they took him.
Yeah.
He just got stonewalled on every single play. And I just thought, this is a little bit worrying because we're not seeing anything. And so that's my thing. Now, the one thing we have seen from Zach is his escapability. Fantastic. Yeah. But you can't, you can't make a living. And as you said, and as many other people have said, bailing on some pockets early. I saw thing. I'm not kidding you. I'm not trying to be funny. I put on the Steelers game on Sunday night. I can't remember who they played.
Dolphins.
And the reason I was going to say I can't remember who they played, I literally watched one play. I wasn't that into it. I was like, let's turn the game on. I see Kenny Pickett. He takes a snap, 3-step drop, boom, delivers the ball right over the middle, no hesitation. I was like, oh, go to hell. And I turned it off. I'm like, this guy's on his 3rd game, and he's like, quick drop, plant the foot, deliver the ball on target. And I was like, I don't need to watch this right now.
Yeah.
And I turned it off.
That's terrible.
It pissed me off, and I didn't watch the game.
He's also fighting defensive linemen, by the way. I see him like pushing and shoving with some big men on the field too, and I'm like, you're a rookie, man. Like, props to you, but yeah, he's ballsy. But that's definitely not a good look when you watch a whole Jets game of Zach Wilson spinning in circles, dodging people, and then you just turn that on and you see a well-timed pass.
Yep, that's the thing is, and a lot of people, you don't. I get that the O-lines, and listen, man, I completely understand some of these plays. He has no time.
No,
like the pressure is there he's halfway into his second step and there's somebody in his face. I get that, but there are plays where he has maybe not the 3 or 4 or 5 seconds you want, but he's got enough time to deliver a ball if he reads the defense and sees an open guy, and it's not happening. And the play you mentioned earlier, the first pass, I tweeted that out, and a couple people have commented, "Oh, you can't nitpick, you can't cherry pick one play." I'm like, but that's an important one because it was the first play of the game or the first pass of the game. So he hadn't had a full day of being under duress and running for his life. It was the first play. And what makes it important to me is he missed by like 10 yards. He wasn't even close. And I'm like, I'm supposed to believe that the pressure is the reason why he's off target, but he's missing. Like, if you miss by a half a step, fine. But I don't know who he was throwing to, Corey Davis or Conklin. They were both in about the same area. He overthrew Davis by 13 yards and Conklin by 10. Like, neither one is like acceptable. So, that kind of hurts the narrative of like, oh, he's only off target because of the pressure. Because he's been under pressure all day. Well, first throw of the day, no pressure, plenty time, wide open receiver, and he missed by 10 yards. Yes, it is just one throw, but little things like that jump out at you when the quarterback is struggling. You're on mute, Dylan.
Of course I'm on mute. I just wanted to highlight one drive here in the third quarter. Their 7th drive of the game, 10 minutes left in the third quarter. The Jets had a 2nd and 3 on their 45, and Zach Wilson airmailed a very easy RPO glance over the middle to CJ Uzomah.
Yep,
CJ put his hand up, and it still went 3 yards over his head. And then the very next play was one of those heart attack passes where Zach's scrambling, and he throws it back over the middle to Tyler Conklin. Obviously, that's not going to be complete. And then you punt in a 10-9 ball game. I feel like that's not what we want when we're in such a tight ball game. And those are the moments where Zach really has to take what the defense gives him, stop forcing things. And I think that all comes down to reading the field better. He could definitely do a better job of that. And I also just think he's purposefully taking the deeper pass because he knows his opportunities are limited now in these games. Okay, I only have 25 dropbacks. I got to make the most out of my 25 dropbacks. And we've heard it in his press conferences. He's not going to just give up on a play. He's always going to try to make a play until it's not a play. And then it's not a good thing ever. It's the no, yes type things that we need to get away from. Yes, they can happen, but as consistently as they're happening with Zach, I don't think it's fundamentally sound for him to learn how to quarterback this way. We can talk about the offensive line and how they're going to move forward without Elijah Vera-Tucker. I think they'll be okay, not great, but it all comes down to Zach at the end of the day. And it's going to be tough to continue to win and rattle off wins like this if Zach does not step it up soon.
And it's going to be interesting to see how, with new linemen coming in and when is Mitchell back and when is Fant back and how they shuffle that around.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I think it's kind of a race to see who gets back first. Me personally, I feel like Fant is closer to being back. I think Mitchell had like a kneecap, so that seems like it should take a lot longer. But I hope it's Mitchell back first because I think Dwayne Brown and Max Mitchell would be the best tackle combination at the moment for this Jets offense. One thing I did want to touch on, and I had in my notes here, due to the Elijah Moore trade, I wanted to see how they utilize their wide receivers differently in this game. Obviously, Corey Davis getting injured 13 snaps into the game does not help the situation. You asked me how Jeff Smith and Denzel Mims, I thought it was going to be split. I said if you gave 35 touches to Moore, it would be 25 to Smith and 10 to Denzel. Well, it turned out that Jeff Smith got 35 snaps, so 60% of the total offensive snaps. 76.5% of those came out wide, according to PFF. That is the Elijah Moore recipe to a T.
Right.
Denzel Mims played 24 snaps, which is 40%, and he had 26.7 in the slot, 73.3 out wide. So they kind of use both of them in that same model that they would use Elijah Moore. Now, the interesting one was Garrett Wilson. He played the most wide receiver snaps out of everybody. I don't think he would have if Corey Davis didn't get hurt. But Garrett Wilson played 73% of the snaps, 33.3% in the slot. Obviously, that means 66.6 out wide. They don't do that with Garrett Wilson. And you know who they should do that with? Elijah Moore. They should bump up Elijah Moore's snaps in the slot to at least 8 to 10% more than what it currently is. I think he sits at 23% for the year, according to PFF. That needs to be 30, 33, even 35%. And
I was going to say 35, 40.
Yeah, we got a report that Mike LaFleur is going to consider or possibly just move Elijah Moore into the slot more often. And I wanted to know if that was what you think is best for the team right now, because I know I'll be completely honest. I was pounding the table. Elijah Moore is a boundary receiver. You don't have to play him in the slot. But when your offense isn't getting him the ball, and I think he's still one of your better playmakers, it's time to adjust a little bit. Obviously, I'm not going to argue with a win, but do you think that usage with Elijah Moore going more in the slot is going to be beneficial to not just him, but everybody in the offense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've said too, Elijah Moore, I think he can play the boundary, and he can. Like he's quick enough and sudden enough that he's gonna get open no matter where you put him. But he probably is better suited, or you're doing a better job of using his entire skill set by putting him in the slot. And if you look at, again, I don't know if this is by design or if Zach is just being overly skittish or whatever it is. Everything Zach is throwing is within 15 yards of the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
So really give me some more of those. If you want to get the ball into Elijah Moore's hands, get him running that underneath stuff, the slants, the digs and things like that, short stuff over the middle, and get him into Zach's, line of sight, because he's really not even looking downfield at this point. And I think that, listen, the more you get, if your offense is struggling, there's one of the things you want to do if you have Elijah Moore on your roster is get the ball to him more often. There's a part of me that wonders, like, what's the effort going to be like? Like, if he doesn't even want to be here, but now he's going to be on the field, what's it going to be like? I think a lot of his trade demand stuff was driven by money. I think it's like, he's already forecasting what he can command in free. I think that's a little silly because he's got a couple years. Like, if he did very little over the next couple of years, and that year before free agency he blew up, he would get paid. That's just the way it happens nowadays. But anyway, I think that he was looking forward to, how can he increase his production. So based on that, I think they're going to get max effort. He may not want to be here. He might hate the coaches. He might not like that his teammates were calling him out for demanding a trade. He might be unhappy about a lot of things, but I think that because of the money factor, I think you're still going to get max effort out of him, which is really what matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, this happened once before with another Jets player, and I actually was reminded of it earlier in the week. You mentioned looking forward to a payday. I actually put out a tweet in December of Mekhi Becton's rookie year, and I said, well, he's probably a shoo-in for the Pro Bowl at this point. So if he gets a second Pro Bowl next year or within his rookie contract, he will be in line for X amount of dollars guaranteed. And he actually liked the tweet. He later unliked the tweet. I think he was, realized that it was probably not the best, move. But it's one of those unfortunate things where sometimes players do have success early on and they want to capitalize and maximize their potential. And I understand Elijah Moore wanting to do that, but when you have 3 years of contract eligibility still under the team's, power, it's very hard to have any leverage in this situation, especially when you're not doing anything on the offense currently to say, hey, come look at me, look at what I've put on tape this year. So it's a tough look. And I remember
Sheldon Richardson. I remember Sheldon Richardson after a strong rookie year. Mm-hmm. I think it was after 1 year, may have been after 2, still early, saying that he deserved JJ Watt money. And it was like, okay. Or he may even be either him or Mo Wilkerson or both. Like, he said somebody deserved JJ Watt money. And I was like, there's nobody in that organization who deserves JJ Watt money. And certainly not a guy who's got a year and a half or 2 years of football behind him.
Yeah, it's silly. I hope that he's back at practice. He's dapped it up with Mike LaFleur. He's talked with Coach Sal. We see it all over Twitter. So hopefully everything's all peaches moving forward. I think he we'll get right into the Patriots preview. He is somebody that the Jets definitely missed last week and could have made a difference in some of those passing situations. And the same thing's going to happen this week. Like we mentioned earlier, the Patriots are going to take away everything in their power to make Zach win it with his arm. And that means Elijah Moore has to win. This is a man-to-man defense. I'm not exactly sure who they will match up against Elijah Moore, especially if Corey Davis is not playing in this game. But they have a rookie named Jack Jones who has 2 picks,
He's playing really well.
He's playing phenomenal football right now.
There's like 4 or 5 rookie corners. Tariq Woolen in Seattle is a monster. I tweeted about him before the draft. I loved his game. I had no idea he would be this good this quick. Nobody did. Otherwise, he goes in the top 10. But yes, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was thinking about that earlier today. Like, there's like 4 or 5 corners who are playing at like all pro level, and rookie corners, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. So Jack Jones he could be up against Elijah Moore. I think that's a matchup to watch for sure. As far as the Jets offensive line, it was confirmed Cedric Ogbuyi will play right tackle. So I believe this is the 6th or 7th offensive tackle combination for the Jets this year. It started with wanting George Fant and Mekhi Becton, and now we are here with Dwayne Brown and Cedric Ogbuyi, players that weren't even on the roster to begin the season. So it's tough. I mean, I look at this game, I look at the coaching. I think first and foremost, you have a coaching disadvantage. Obviously, it's Bill Belichick. But I think outside of Bill Belichick, the Jets have equal or better coaching supporting their head coach. I think Bill Belichick has had to make a lot of decisions on his own, which that's all up to him. He's the general manager as well. He is the one that ultimately put himself in this position. They always say the GM Bill Belichick hurts the coach Bill Belichick, and it's absolutely happening. Their offensive coordinator situation is very weird with Joe Judge and Matt Patricia or whatever the heck they're doing there. And I think outside of coaching, the Jets on paper are a much better team. And it's not even, I don't even think it's close. And I don't want to say that because I don't want to.
It feels weird to say it.
It's super weird. And I know Samini put out that the Jets, this is the first time the Jets without Brady in 0-1 or like, you know, a better team or something like that was along the lines of his tweet. And I didn't know how to react to it. I was like, I feel you, but I want to see it first. And I feel like after last year, 54-13 or whatever that was, that embarrassing welcome to the NFL moment for Rob Saleh.
Yeah.
Something's got to be said for.
I think if the Jets outplay them and the Jets are up by a couple scores in the fourth quarter, I think they're still. I think we're going to see a lot of blitzing in this game again.
Yes.
Not just for that. Like, I think they do want to test Mac Jones. You know, you mentioned earlier, and it's been said that this defense has probably played better when they rush 4, but I think they're going to want to put him through hell, and rightfully so.
Yeah. Quick note: Mac Jones was named the starting quarterback. There was a bit of a controversy entering the Monday night game as to who was going to play, and then Schefter came out like on the field in the pregame and said, "Oh, you'll probably see both quarterbacks." And they ended up seeing both quarterbacks. Mac Jones was benched. Bailey Zappi came in. But the difference in these two guys is pretty astronomical. Crazy. Mac Jones has 799 yards to Bailey Zappi's 781. So they're very close there. Mac Jones has a 2-6 touchdown interception ratio, and Bailey Zappi is 5-3. So clearly one is holding on to the ball a lot longer than he needs to, and that's Mac Jones. And I tweeted it out mid-Monday night game. I said, the Jets want Mac Jones. They don't want any part of Bailey Zappi. Not saying Bailey Zappi is a great quarterback or can carve them up, but
he just presents more challenges.
Exactly. Similarly to Brett Rippon versus Russell Wilson, Brett Rippon is going to come in and see the field better. He's going to efficiently run the offense. He made a lot of good plays, Brett Rippon, and I could see the same thing being said for Bailey Zappi. Now, does that mean Bailey Zappi's not going to play? No, absolutely not. Bill Belichick's a crazy person, and anything can happen if Mac
Jones might play one drive and get pulled.
Exactly. And I think we need to talk about how much of a bad situation that is for Mac Jones, unfortunate as it is. Like, they found out Monday, the morning of the game, who was going to start. It was just a super ugly situation to pull him after 3 drives. The crowd was booing. He threw a pick. Bailey Zappi's not like much better than Mac Jones to begin with. So I understand Patriots fans' frustrations, but it was just a bad look to me. And I thought that was worth putting on the pod, because if that happens again, the Jets really need to take advantage and, hey, maybe get a 40-14 lopsided victory.
That'd be
in
nice.
reverse. So
That would be nice. It's been a long time since they beat the Patriots soundly.
yeah, I do the game plan preview article every week for JetNation, which will come out tomorrow. I think Friday is going to be my more consistent day with it. It's very hard to get it out Thursday with the pod and everything we do today. So tomorrow it'll come out, and I do matchup history. And the Jets have not won since that overtime game with Eric Decker, 26-20. It's 12 straight losses. It's quite frankly an embarrassment. But you know that the Rob Saleh is going to have these guys fired up, bulletin board material, so to speak. And I think that that's helping the Jets this season. Whatever's helping win, just keep it going. And I feel like these injuries aren't going to slow down the team as much. It will look different. Don't get me wrong. The identity of running the ball is kind of gone to a degree with AVT and Brees, but they're going to power through. And I think that that is the best thing you can hang your hat on as a young team that's trying to learn how to win in this league. So, I mean, do you have a prediction? I'll let you go first with a prediction. I haven't written one down. But
man. Yeah. I've gone back and forth on it. And, the Zach Wilson thing against the Bill Belichick defense worries me a little bit, but just leaning on the fact that the Jets overall, and I've said it a couple times, I think this defense can be special. I think this defense will be good enough to shut down whatever New England wants to do. And I think that, I think the Jets win this one. I think it's another low scoring game, maybe a 17-14 type. I want to see a win, obviously, but please, can we see Zach Wilson do something that makes you say that's the guy they drafted? That's why I wanted Zach Wilson. And not a couple of swings and a couple of incomplete passes over the middle and waiting for the running back or the receiver to make a play after the completion. And I sound like a little bit of a hypocrite here, Dylan. I have to be honest, because I've said for years with all these quarterbacks, bring them along slow. Don't ask them to do too much. Look at what the Patriots did with Brady when he was new. It was like, hey, Tom, for the first year, you're just gonna throw screen passes till you get comfortable, and then we'll start letting you throw past the line of scrimmage.
Right.
But for years I've said don't put too much on the quarterback's plate, but the Jets have gone to we're putting nothing on his plate, and I'm like something. And so this week I just want to see something from Zach that makes me go, there's the guy I wanted in the draft, and come away with the win and get ready for the next one.
Yeah, there has to be some sort of middle ground amidst all of this. I think when you're such a pass-happy team the first few weeks and then you just completely transfer over to a run-heavy team like they have, you got to find a way to be more balanced, because you're not going to be in a situation to run the ball no matter what the score and down and distance and, time of possession looks like. You're just not going to. You're going to have to pass. This might be the game where Zach Wilson has to pass. I hope he eclipses 200 yards. I think it's possible. I think it comes down to who can establish the run more. Both teams you can probably run on, at a good clip. Nobody's going to be, 100 plus yards as a team. But if the Jets can get out to 75, 85, maybe 90 yards rushing as a team, I think that will definitely help them. But Zach's got to throw for 210 in this game, at least a touchdown. Somebody put it in the comments. Mike, he says Zach has to throw a touchdown in this game. No question. I feel you. I'm 100% there. I don't know if I can go 5-0 without a Zach touchdown and really feel good about the quarterback position going forward. I feel great about a lot of other things moving forward, but it's hard when 5-0 and your quarterback's doing absolutely nothing to contribute. It makes it tough. My final prediction will be similar to what Joe put in the comment there, 21-13. I had 24-16. I think it'll be just a little bit higher scoring. The Patriots defense is very good. They have a couple injuries, but they're just not what they always have been. And I think that the Jets will be able to score as long as Zach Wilson does the things he needs to, takes care of the ball. Find Elijah Moore, my guy. Just hit him a couple times. I don't care if it's 4 times in a row. Just look his way, because good things always happen when Elijah has the ball. I always go back to the Miami play with Joe Flacco. Across the middle, hit him on the slant, like you said, and he'll just take it. So something's got to give with this passing offense, and I hope that this is finally the game where we see it.
Yeah, listen, it can't carry on this way. It's not sustainable.
I looked up the Bucks rushing attack, completely off topic, but they were just putrid, 60, 70. They had a game with 3 team rushing yards, and I compared it to the Jets. I'm like, I understand running isn't as important in the NFL, but to most teams, right now it is. And the Jets need the run game, but you also need Zach Wilson to look competent, and he's looked okay. It's hard to like we said, I love pancakes, you hate waffles. It's hard to come on and say everything we need to say about Zach because we could spend 2.5 hours strictly breaking down Zach and the great and the good and the bad and the horrible because there's just a lot of all of it right now. So hey, I'm rooting for 2-0 in the division. I banked on 3-3. We got 3 tough games in a row with a bye in between. New England, Buffalo, New England again. It's tough. This is going to be gut check time for the team. Defense, you better show up, get after Mac Jones. You got any last words before we get out of here? I know we didn't get to the draft talk.
No, look, that's fine. Just as we always say, check out the forums at JetNation.com. Most active message board on the web, most active Jets message board on the web. Dylan's at D Tereman. I'm at AceFan23, ACEFan23. Started up a new Twitter account. Well, not started up. Started a few years ago. Let it die because just didn't keep up with it. But I want to get it going again. It's going to be strictly only looking at draft picks, highlights of draft eligible players. It's what is it at Jets Picks on Twitter.
Yep.
But it won't be just Jets geared. It's going to be everyone who's coming out. And I just wanted to keep it separate because I didn't want to. I'm going to use that account to follow draft eligible players on Twitter. And I didn't want to add 600 or 700 follows to my primary account and have the Jet stuff get buried by draft prospects.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I'm glad you shouted that out. I was definitely going to if you didn't. At Jets Picks on Twitter. We're going to just be pumping in tons of clips, tons of notes, and, combine stats on all these players. And like you said, you're going to follow a lot of these prospects. So that just increases our chances of having somebody that's draft eligible come on the pod and talk to us. So everything's going to be cool. I love it. We'll get back into the draft stuff. Maybe on the bye week, we'll definitely do the rookie update as well. It's kind of perfect. They have a 9-game stretch and then an 8-game stretch with a bye in the middle. So we can break up.
That might be a good idea. Do a whole show on the rookies and a draft show.
Exactly. And as we promised, maybe we'll go a little longer. We'll do a little mailbag, answer any questions you have on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, anything. We'll scour all the comments and find anything nice. So we appreciate everybody tuning in. Like Glenn said, at AceFan23, that's him on Twitter. At D Tereman, that's me on Twitter. Follow us at JetNation everywhere, all social medias. Let's get to 6-2, 2-0 in the division. It's gonna feel great getting that Patriot win off our back, and I feel it coming. I think this is the year. This is the week. MetLife's gonna get loud. Everybody show up, get in your seats early, do all the things the Twitter admin's telling you to do because it makes a difference. I promise you. We'll talk to you guys again next week. And as always, let's go Jets.